media sector.
In politics, there are easy lies and hard truths. We're finished with the easy lies that we can borrow forever, and we're back to the hard truth that we need to balance our budget in this country if we want to have a sustainable, secure future for generations to come. We need to balance the books. The fact that we're doing that without new taxes, I think, is a triumph. It sets New Zealand apart from Australia, and where we have delivered new things, it has come by saving elsewhere. I'm particularly proud of the initiative to give councils incentive for growth. If councils permit more building, they will get more money from the government. That means that when you're frustrated with getting a consent or you're frustrated not enough homes get built, there's now a good reason for councils to say yes, and the more they consent, the more money they get. For the first 1% of their existing housing stock, they get 0.25% of the value of those homes. For the next 1%, they get 0.5% of the value of the homes, and if they do more than 2% of the existing housing stock, they get 1.25% of the values of those homes. I'm also really pleased to see the new Firearms Authority, something that ACT has campaigned on for 6 years. It's now become a reality, just like that Council Incentives for Growth, 10 years of campaigning, now a reality. We're seeing more money for Farmac, we're taking on Wilding Pines, and we're ensuring that our future will be secure as we go towards surplus a year earlier. Yeah, it's absolutely critical that we keep Kiwis safe while treating people. I'll just let. Yeah, look, it's absolutely critical that we keep people safe from firearm danger while treating legitimate firearm owners with respect. We've failed to do that spectacularly in both directions, sadly. We are finding the balance between keeping everyone safe from misuse of guns while ensuring that people that legally have every right to have them are doing that in a way they're respectfully treated. No, frankly, there has to be principles. If your answer to everything is to go out and find someone to tax, eventually you end up with a really big government and no money left for anybody else. And let's be honest, banks only have one source of money, that's their customers. So let's not tell the easy lie that we would be taxing the banks, you'd be taxing their customers. The government does not have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem, and that's why we're getting spending down rather than revenue up. And when I say that, I'm quoting Nicola Willis herself. Well, there's no question that ultimately customers will pay the cost of this new levy, but it is fair because they're already paying it in terms of the FMA and the Commerce Commission's regulation of financial market authorities. If you're going to have a tax that, if you're going to pay for regulating the financial sector, I think it's critical that it's paid for by the people that use it rather than all taxpayers. Now, in fair, yeah, but it would be in Kiwis' back pockets in the future if that money was borrowed. The Kiwis would be paying it back with interest.
So you told me last year that, as Nicola was doing this exercise of looking at bank taxes, that she'd come to the same conclusion as you had, that banks were being fairly taxed. Why didn't she come to that?
Well, I won't speak for her, but frankly, I think the fact we are going to balance our budget with no new taxes, that's a triumph for New Zealand. It sets us up. Well, you're asking me to explain her reasoning. I'd rather let her do that. All I know is that we're not putting in place a new tax. We're saying if you're regulated by the Commerce Commission, you pay a levy for that. If you're regulated by the FMA, you pay a levy for that. If you're regulated by the Reserve Bank, you pay an equal levy. That seems fair. It's principled. It's only paid for a specific purpose. Sorry.
If you didn't believe it, then you could have had the power as the coalition partner to have blocked it from happening at all, even if it is less than 1%. Why didn't you do that?
Well, basically for the exact reasons I just gave you. I just answered your question.
You mentioned hard truths at the start of your remarks. Nicola Willis and yourself both talked in the lock-up about superannuation.
an increase in costs, given the unsustainability of the status quo, how do you feel about going into coalition again with a party that is essentially said it will veto any change consideration?
Well, it's only a matter of time with these things. You go back 3 years, the ACT Party said we needed to shrink the bureaucracy, have fewer government departments, and sooner or later the hard numbers would prove us right. In this budget, ACT has been proven right. We are now doing the things that we said were needed 3 years ago, shrinking the public sector, shrinking the number of departments, bending the spending curve down to balance the budget that way.
But if it's
Sorry. Well, I was the architect of that. We explained it as GST sharing because we wanted to demonstrate that the central government was collecting a whole lot of revenue, including GST, every time somebody built a home, and we said the government should give some of that money to the council. So what we're doing is we're giving money collected by the government. You can call it GST, you can call it income tax, you can call it company tax or excise tax. A portion of that goes to the council.
But if you split the GST the government collected 50/50, would it equate to the same amount?
No, when we calculated at that level, it would be over $1 billion. So what we're sharing is not 7.5% of the building costs, which would be GST. It's closer to 0.5% of the building costs. So this is unquestionably a smaller amount than we initially proposed. But of course, we're in a much tougher fiscal environment than we initially expected. Can I just finish one final point? Which is that if you look at Auckland would get $32 million this year in this formula, Queenstown would get $7.5 million because there's so much building there, Christchurch and Selwyn would each get about $8 million. So in the context of council budgets, this is significant, and if they want more money, let people build more houses.
Your collective fiscal in terms of school budgets. Why? And will ACT campaign heavy that
Well, the ACT Party opposes the program, we always have. I've been given, some would say, a bit of a hospital pass, but I've done my best with it. We've saved a lot of money, we've delivered the same quality. We now have work underway to ask the question, if it's about learning, why do you wait for halfway through the school day? If it's about kids who are hungry and poor, why does it go to kids from wealthy households and poor schools, but not kids from poor households and wealthy schools? All of those things are on the table, and we may be able to do it much, much better. So that I don't regard it as a cliff, because the government has no intention of including and continuing the policy as it currently is.
Fiscal debt in particular is still going up and up and up and up, and the cost of the interest is rising even more so than what we saw in the half-year business update. At what point can you actually turn it around?
Well, you're going to see it turn around from 2028 when you get back into surplus and start paying down debt. But you're absolutely right, although bear in mind, part of the reason the debt seems worse now, the interest is higher, is because every government in the world is paying higher interest rates than 6 months ago because someone decided to blow up a country and block the supply of oil to the world.
In that vein, how much confidence do you have in the forecasts that Treasury has put forward and whether they are current as we stand today?
Well, I'm confident in the Treasury's work. I just don't know if anyone's going to start a war. I mean, some things are even the Treasury can't predict. I think I've got to do one more, so I'll just do what I haven't done any for. This budget is going to get more homes built, it invests in education, it's going to keep the streets safer, massive investment in health, including medicines, and last time I looked, it's pretty hard to find Māori people who don't want an education, a job, a home and healthcare.
Were there just one
Very last one.
Were there any other taxes proposed that you didn't agree to?
Look, I never talk about our internal discussions, but I'm very proud there's no new taxes in this budget. We're going to balance the budget without taxing people more, and that is a major triumph for New Zealand. Thank you very much. Cheers, thank you.
Isn't it, Corin?
100%.
Yeah.
I think that that Nicola Willis has decided that they couldn't go for the cost of living, sweetener. They've put it a contingency there of $450. There's a whole lot of other stuff that's normal sort of budget fare, and they've gone right all in on the surplus, on the books, on the discipline, and then try and really ramp that into the election and say, look at us, we've fixed the books, we're getting things on track, trust us. And bank on that. It's risky, Might work, who knows? But that's where they're going.
Do you see that boxing Labour in, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I think so. I mean, this is kind of what you would expect from Nicola Willis, though, because there's been a theme, right? This isn't new from her. I mean, definitely the last budget was very similar in terms of that small operating allowance. We were just talking before about the first year. Perhaps they could have been a little bit more nip and tuck and a little bit tighter, and maybe in election year they might have had a little bit more to throw around. But yeah, look, in terms of Labour, coming back to the conversation before, Guy, which is an interesting one around what Labour's actually going to do, right? Because they're going to have a whole bunch of policies and ideas and things that have been cut already in the last 2.5 years by this government.
And they face that awful thing about whether you're going to bring it back or not.
Well,
I mean, things like pay equity, right? I mean, couldn't that cost over 10 billion, depending on how you do it?
Well, Chris Hipkins keeps saying he doesn't know how they got to that 12 billion figure. And until they can look at those books, they can't decide whether they would actually put it back in as it was, so to speak. They haven't made decisions about whether they would bring fees free back, which has been scrapped in this year's budget. So there's a whole range of things there that now that he has got the numbers, they're going to have to go away, Labour, in the coming weeks and make some actually pretty tough decisions, I think.
Yeah, they'll benefit from the things like, without wanting to sound too flippant, they can now accuse the government of increasing taxes because they've put a levy on the bank.
With the bank levy.
I don't think anyone will be too upset about that. I don't think the violins
will be playing for the banks,
will they? It's called a levy.
Eh?
These are levies. They're not taxes. The levy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, look, on a serious note, I did seriously talk to some economists about that, and they sort of looked at that with a bit of a side eye and went, that could be a door that is opened in the future, because there are plenty of people here and around the world who would like to see banks levied or taxed.
Yeah,
no. Because it's not a lot of money, the levy that's been announced.
Yeah, no, that'll be tempting for others to have a crack at in the future. All right, well, look, we're coming up to 3 o'clock. Thank you so much for lending us your ears over the last hour. I've been speaking with Correndana, our business editor, Joe Moyer, our political editor, Giles Beckford, economics correspondent. We had all our specialist reporters from health and education, Pacifica and Māori issues too. Look, stay tuned to...
That's great.
For listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.
RNZ National News.
RNZ News at 3 o'clock. Good afternoon. Ahi Marie, I'm Evie Ashton. The Finance Minister says this year's budget paves the way for economic growth, higher wages and rising employment. The budget contains no sugar hits for voters, with a focus instead on core health and infrastructure spending and the overarching fuel crisis. Nicola Willis says it's a responsible budget and the government is spending taxpayers' money wisely.
New Zealanders can look forward to growth, higher wages and rising employment. They can look forward to better public infrastructure, expanded healthcare services, better schooling for their kids and safer communities.
Nicola Willis says despite chaos in the Middle East, Treasury is forecasting return to surplus in 2028-29, a year earlier than forecast in December. Schools and early childhood services are in line for an almost $2 billion funding boost over the next 4 years. Operations grants will increase by 2% next year, while early childhood subsidies will rise 1.5% from July. The budget allocates about $240 million for teacher training and resources for new curriculums and a new secondary school qualification. It also provides $69 million over 4 years to double the number of secondary school students attending trades academies to 20,000 by 2030. Meanwhile, the budget freezes subsidies for almost all tertiary courses and paves the way for student fee rises of up to 6%. It provides a 2% increase only for foundation courses at a cost of $7 million a year. However, it also allocates $284 million over the next 2 years to cover high enrolments that have left some universities and polytechnics carrying unsubsidised students. Meanwhile, there is more pain for students. As well as axing the fees-free scheme, which saves the government $1 billion over 4 years, the budget will allow tertiary institutes to raise fees by up to 6% for the third consecutive year. This year's budget is putting more than $150 million over the next 4 years into IT upgrades and cyber security. There have been a number of health portal hacks in the past year, most notably Manage My Health. Health New Zealand is also investing $300 million of its share of the budget to replacing ageing devices, modernising radiology systems and upgrading core IT platforms. A boost of $48 million over 4 years for Māori broadcasting is the one highlight for Māori in this year's budget. Māori Development Minister Tamo Potaka says the long-term sustainability of Māori broadcasting will ensure Te Reo Māori remains strong. In other news, a US official says American forces in the Middle East have shot down 4 Iranian attack drones that they say posed a threat around the Strait of Hormuz. The official says the military also struck an Iranian ground control station in the port city of Bandar Abbas. The BBC's Peter Bowes has more.
We've heard from the US military. This is, they say, purely defensive, and we're hearing other reports that the military believes that it does not put the ceasefire in jeopardy, that this was to protect US forces and also civilian vessels, commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. And this is now the second time in a few days that we've had a similar situation.
A person is in hospital in a serious condition after an incident in Auckland. 2 ambulances and 3 rapid response units responded to an industrial area of Mount Wellington just before 1:45. Hatohone St John says it treated 1 patient in a serious condition and took them to Auckland Hospital. And a Wellington City Councillor remains at odds with the Mayor over his involvement in a search and rescue operation during a storm last month. Ray Chung found himself in trouble after attending a search for the Karori man, Philip Sutton, who was swept away in the floodwaters. Ellen O'Dwyer reports.
Mr Chung resigned as chair of the council-controlled organisation's subcommittee last week. He says he attended the search scene for Philip Sutton on April the 21st to stop volunteers from getting in harm's way at the South Karori property. Mr Sutton's family called for volunteers to help search, but police urged the public to stay away because conditions were too dangerous. Mayor Andrew Little says Mr Chung should not have got involved, and police contacted him to raise concerns about the councillor's actions.
That's the news. Koina ngā putuputu kōrero. A short forecast and a mountain forecast are next.
This morning on First Up, we heard about what people want from this year's budget.
Where does the money really need to go to? Does it really need to go to get this building built, or does it really need to go to where families need help?
And we found out what record temperatures mean for players at the French Open.
So the ball hits and kicks off faster. It's almost like playing like grass, or like the old-fashioned grass used to at Wimbledon.
I'm Nathan Rarere. Join me for First Up, weekday mornings, live from 5 here on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. Now the short forecast ahead of the mountain forecast from Met Service to midnight at Aomere Friday. Northland to Manawatu, also Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa. Isolated showers clearing most places this evening, but hanging around in Northland and Coromandel until tomorrow morning. Some morning fog. Bay of Plenty and Gisborne fine today. Isolated showers tomorrow. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington. Partly cloudy with low cloud near the south coast. Nelson, Buller, Marlborough and Canterbury. Mainly fine, some low cloud about the east coast until mid-afternoon and everywhere tomorrow morning and evening. Grey and Westland, fine spells increasing, some fog tomorrow morning. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, mainly fine. Cloud lingering in some valleys and isolated showers near the south coast. And Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy, a few showers. Now the mountain forecast to midnight Friday. For the North Island, Te Papakura o Taranaki to Tongariro National Parks, mostly cloudy with isolated afternoon showers, becoming fine tomorrow afternoon. For the remaining North Island areas, cloud increasing with isolated showers, clearing to fine from the south tomorrow morning and elsewhere by tomorrow evening. Winds are southwesterlies dying out this afternoon and the freezing level is 2,600 metres, rising to 3,000 metres tomorrow evening. For the South Island, Kahurangi to Mount Espiritu Spiring National Park, including the Kokoda Ranges, fine apart from some morning valley cloud. Fiordland National Park, cloudy with a few showers south of Doubtful Sound. Becoming fine for a time tomorrow during the day. Elsewhere, fine apart from morning and evening valley fog. Winds are westerlies easing this evening, then northerlies developing tomorrow afternoon. The freezing level is 2,600 metres, sloping to 2,100 metres in the south, rising to 2,900 metres tomorrow evening. It is 7 minutes past 3 and you're on Afternoons with Jessie Mulligan.
Kia ora. Well, enjoyed that budget coverage, and we're still making our way through the fine print, but we hope you got to what you needed out of that budget special here on Afternoons. Mary Holm has been listening and has not spotted much of interest from the KiwiSaver point of view, so instead she's going to talk about the Retirement Commission conference she's been at, and there's been a lot of ideas for her to share from that, so she'll join us in just a little bit. We will also have our politics group chat just after 3:30, chewing over the week's events in politics and culture. Do you have a song you like to turn up loud and sing like no one is listening? Well, we want to hear all about it. If you've got a roadie song you'd like to play for everyone else in their car around New Zealand, get in touch. We've got a segment called Songs for a Roadie. It's an irregular, infrequent segment, but we love when we get a few minutes getting one of them on. So tell us about your roadie song on 2101, or if it's easier, email me, jesse@rnz.co.nz. Tell me why you love it. And we may just give you a call, which is exactly what I did with Megan.
Hello, Megan speaking.
Megan, hey, it's Jessie Mulligan calling from Radio New Zealand. How's it going?
Great, how are you going?
Good. Have I caught you in the middle of anything?
Just booking a dog into daycare, thank you. Nothing much.
Does the dog enjoy it?
Don't know. It's new.
First time?
First time.
Yeah, what's the story? Are you heading back to work or something?
No, going on holiday. And
Gosh, you'll have lots of envious listeners if you're heading on holiday. You going somewhere exciting?
I'm going to Australia with
Yeah.
my husband and daughter for my niece's wedding.
Oh, that's going to be cracking fun. Good work.
Really good. And then to Sydney for 4 days for the first time in about 20 years.
Yeah.
Really excited.
Oh, gosh, that will have changed. I am calling about roadie songs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I asked to get in touch if you had a favourite, and do you recall what you nominated?
It was a CCR song.
Creedence Clearwater Revival, yes, for our younger listeners. Yep.
I can't remember the name. But
Have you ever seen the rain?
Yeah, I could sing it in my head, but I didn't know the name.
Is there any better sing-along music than Creedence Clearwater Revival?
No, not when you're on the way to camping. And, with your dad. And, annual tradition.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit. Oh, that's the dog's just found out he's going to daycare. Tell me a bit about these road trips then. Take us back.
So I grew up in Hawke's Bay, and every year for 2 to 3 weeks we would just go off-grid. And Dad would dig a loo and then dig another pit for the butter and all the cold stuff.
Right. Don't get the two mixed up.
No, don't get the two mixed up. Very separate. And we'd have a safe in a meat safe in the tree.
Jeez, this is off-grid.
Yeah. Dad would cool his beer in the river. It was always by a river. Dad hates sand. I don't like sand much either. And then we'd just camp. And then we'd usually have an auntie or uncle that would visit us partway through and bring some provisions and lunch or something.
Oh, man, that's what...
Yeah. Really good time.
Talk about the stuff memories are made of. Do you reckon people do that anymore?
I think it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
A lot harder. It was a lot of gear. They've only just sold all the gear. Mum would make scones in a Dutch oven type thing.
Yeah.
It was pretty full commitment for both of them.
And as I recall, I may have this wrong, but as I recall in the 80s, you could just sort of go and park up next to a stream somewhere and no one really cared. Certainly no one was moving you on.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't a campground or anything.
Yeah.
But then sort of it used to morph and we'd stay like on a farmer's paddock or, someone who had set up a little bit of a campground, but nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing like now.
What was your dad?
More like the Auckland, Auckland Regional Parks.
Yeah.
Kind of similar.
What was your dad driving?
A Triumph 2000, which I learnt to drive into. The Kiwi tank, no power steering.
80s classic, eh?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
I've also got a note from you on your text. Our toy box emptied.
Oh, yes. So in the playhouse, we had a big wooden toy box, and then that would get emptied out, and then Mum would fill it up with all the food, and that became our
that's cool.
pantry in the holiday.
Yeah.
For the camping.
Is your dad still around?
He is still around. He's doing well. The toy box is still in the playhouse. And with the old telephone.
And now he's got a granddaughter who doesn't know how good she's got it, jumping on a plane and heading to Australia rather than
I know.
the whole toilet and the meat locker, meat safe.
Yeah, exactly. No, we all had great camping holidays. I don't think the older girls liked it so much. They were more like teenagers in the 80s.
Yeah.
But,
gosh.
yeah, we also loved the idea of camping.
Yeah.
None of us really go camping anymore.
Proper memory making. Okay, well, I'm going to give this song a spin. It's a great choice, and we'll do this for your dad, okay?
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Lovely to speak with you.
Nice to chat to you, and good luck negotiating this doggy daycare. I'm sure it's going to be great, and you're going to have a brilliant family holiday in Aussie.
Thanks so much, Jesse.
Oh, that was one of the best. I love that, Megan. Thank you. And if that's inspired you to get...
Today's budget shows that Nicola Willis and Christopher Luxon live in a different reality to most New Zealanders. While they crow about making progress, for most Kiwi households, they're feeling things going backwards. The cost of living's going up, their jobs have never felt more uncertain, and they're really struggling. This government don't see them, they don't hear them, and today's budget makes it clear they don't care about them either.
You said the government's done nothing to ease the pressure on everyday New Zealanders. What should have they done? Should have they been providing some sort of payment, subsidy, welfare, and what sort of policy would you like to see?
Let's be really clear about it. Today's budget actually makes it tougher for a lot of New Zealand households. It's asking some of those with the least to sacrifice the most. State house tenants who already can't make their budgets add up are being asked to find more money to pay increased rents so that they can give more money effectively to private sector landlords. It's a bad set of choices that's going to make life tougher for New Zealand households.
You're saying that they shouldn't have done those initiatives with nothing else. You're saying that they should have done something.
Well, we're going to set out our own plan. Obviously, we've only just seen the government's budget, so happy to comment on their budget. We'll comment on our own plans once we've had a chance to really crunch the numbers ourselves.
Is there anything in that budget that you've seen so far that you would cancel immediately?
We're going to take the time to do our homework properly before we make those calls.
Is there anything you support?
That's relatively prudent. The government's forecasts are all based on petrol prices dropping from now. So literally, their forecasts are based on the idea that petrol prices start falling from June. June is literally a few days away.
What did you make of Nicola Willis's comments that, these are, this is a path to getting the books back in black?
There's a lot of smoke and mirrors involved here. Winston Peters has already said that the several $100 million worth of cuts to MFAT that Nicola Willis has banked in this year's budget aren't going to happen. How many other ministers are going to be doing the same? Still 2 years later than the surplus that was forecast before the election. So Nicola Willis has made things worse and is now trying to crow about the fact that she's made them slightly less worse than she made them in the first place.
Now that you've seen the budget, would you reverse the stop-cuts the government's making or stop the public sector jobs?
Yeah, as I've said, we're going to take some time to digest the budget carefully. We can clearly see what wasn't in this year's budget, which was stuff that's going to give New Zealanders hope. We'll set out our own plans. We will have a different set of priorities to this government. I think the prospect of employment would give a lot of New Zealanders hope. 40,000 fewer jobs today than there were when this government took office, and what they're basically saying is that there's more jobs cuts to come. We're going to crunch those numbers carefully, but overall, capital spending, is still struggling relative to what it was before this government took office. They actually slowed down a lot of capital spending when they came into government.
So you'll have high capital spending?
Oh, look, we'll set that out ourselves in due course. We've seen the budget 2 hours ago.
When do you expect?
Do you take it to any of the capital spending allocation?
Not on the surface of it. Obviously, the more investment we're making in capital, the better for the country. We'll certainly be setting out a fiscal plan that's different to this government. So it'll build off the current government's budget and show how we would do things differently.
When do you expect?
In due course.
About superannuation, and those who don't see the need for change are effectively robbing everyone under the age of 50. Do you accept that?
Well, she hasn't changed anything around superannuation in her budget.
Sorry, I'm just asking you about your policy on superannuation. Do you accept that no changes to superannuation is basically robbing everyone under the age of 50?
No, I don't accept that. Every government has choices around how it supports those in retirement. This government are making a different set of choices to the ones we'd made. I've already pointed out some areas where we would make different choices. We wouldn't prioritise landlords over supporting older New Zealanders. We wouldn't be increasing the rents for 30,000 pensioners currently living in state housing. We're going to set that out. We'll set out our own plans in due course. I'm not going to do that today, having only just seen the budget 2 hours ago.
So the superannuation bill is going to blow out to $30 billion. The superannuation bill is going to blow out to $30 billion by the year 2030. What are you going to do to fill that gap that we need to pay for that?
There's nothing particularly new in these forecasts. New Zealand has been planning for an increased number of people in retirement for many years. If the national government hadn't cut contributions to the New Zealand Superannuation Fund, we would be in a better position than we're in now.
$30 billion better.
Every time.
Will you dip into the superannuation fund to pay for it?
Well, that's what it's designed for.
Do you support the bank levy? Do you support the proposed bank levy?
The bank levy?
Yes.
So we support the fees because it's basically to pay for the regulator to regulate over those banks and insurance companies. What I'll be really disappointed though is to see if they pass on those costs to their customers, given the profits that they have. So obviously it should be set at reasonable rates given the cost that it is to regulate them, and so I have I'm quite indifferent to it.
Seeing the
that the banks will pass on the costs to customers, would you still proceed with the levy if you're a club?
And that's why I said I'd be disappointed if they did, given that they're high profits.
Seeing the
I'm not going to basically rule what's in and what's out for Labour, and we're going to come at that with a little bit later.
Seeing the budget in full, do you think the changes to fees free were justified?
If you look at the cuts they made, they said they were going to put this into vocational education, and they've put a fraction of the money that they have cut from fees free into vocational education. We're going to go through and do our own number crunching on exactly where they've moved the money around before we make a call on how we would do that differently.
So would you consider fees free, do you think, going forward?
As I've said, we're going to crunch the numbers ourselves to figure out where that money's gone before we make that call. Increased postnatal support is a very good thing. Oh, look, there are going to be plenty of things in the government's budget that we will welcome. Any increase in support for people in the health system is something that we're going to welcome.
What did you make of the Waikato Expressway?
Sorry, Tom, and then I'll come back to you.
They've lowered the screening age from 58 down to 56. Christopher Luxon on the campaign trail made that promise that he would match Australia. He's fallen short of that before this election. Has he broken the promise?
50 in Australia.
This is a huge broken promise. The Australians have been lowering the bowel screening age since we made that commitment. Christopher Luxon and I both made that commitment to lower it at that point to 60. They've barely touched the sides of doing that. The sooner, sorry, it was to 50, yeah, sorry, let me get that right. Can I do that again? Christopher Luxon and I both promised on the campaign trail that we would lower the bowel screening age to 50 to match what it was in Australia. Since then, the Australians have lowered their screening age further. This is another broken promise, much like his promise around cancer medications, that they just didn't keep.
What did you...
Those economic growth forecasts are still lower than they were before the election.
Sorry, just to be clear, if the books stack up, you're happy, you're wanting to bring that fees through?
No, I haven't made that call. I said we're going to go and crunch our own numbers, and then we'll come up with a different set of priorities. We will set out a different set of priorities to the current governments.
What did you make?
In an ideal world, you want fees free to return?
In an ideal world, I want tertiary education to be a lot more affordable for young New Zealanders than it is. I want Kiwis to have a lot less debt when they finish their tertiary studies.
In an ideal world with Labour, how is Labour going to pay for its, how's Labour going to pay for the changes in terms of pay equity?
We'll set out our own fiscal plan, which will include our commitments around pay equity.
And is it a full commitment to restore pay equity in terms of the previous budget?
We'll set out our own commitments around pay equity, and pay equity will be a feature of our plans.
What did you make of the Waikato Expressway funding?
Overall, more funding for roads in New Zealand is a good thing. The Waikato Expressway has already been a great thing for that region. A further extension is a good thing. That was already on the books before the election. It was something that we had also committed to, so I'm certainly not going to criticise them for doing something that we also had committed to doing.
So you're supportive of the ROCs?
Not always. I think the big challenge here is this year's budget still leaves a massive question around how the roads of national significance are going to be paid for. There's still billions and tens of billions of dollars worth of commitments, promises made under the roads of national significance that the government hasn't indicated how they're going to pay.
Yeah, for example, the Northland Expressway wipes out the National Land Transport Fund. So they've announced a whole bunch of roads, but the National Land Transport Fund can't even fund one of those.
Does that take pressure off you to come up with revenue generation schemes?
The pathway back to surplus in this budget's a pretty flimsy one. If you look at the savings that they are banking in order to try and create that illusion of surplus, Whether those savings are credible is something that we're going to be probing very carefully. Hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts to DOC and to biosecurity and to a lot of frontline services would need to be made in order to meet those projections that are in this year's budget. And some of those, I'm not sure they're going to be credible when we get into the detail of them, but obviously we'll do that carefully over the coming weeks. Yeah, there's about $2 billion that they've banked in savings there. Now, they've set out a rough indication of which departments they think they're going to cut in order to achieve that. Department of Conservation, big cuts there. The Ministry for Primary Industries, bearing in mind that what we're talking about here are frontline services like biosecurity. These are things that could have quite a significant impact on New Zealand's economy in a very detrimental way.
The changes to tax credits for charity donations, $33,000 is the cap, that's a question for you, Mark. Are you worried about what that might mean for people choosing to donate to charity? Perhaps they can bring in less donations as a result?
That is possible. So in 2024, IRD did a review of the donations tax credit. 45% of people said that they donated because of the donations tax credit, and an additional 22% said that they gave more. So therefore, it's a question whether you will see a reduction in donations to charities. And let's remember, charities right now are doing the heavy lifting of social services because this government is cutting funding in those spaces.
You don't support these changes?
I want to have a good look at it. So we haven't seen the legislation for it. We don't know if there's any other consequences in relation to it. I want to see the regulatory impact assessment and to see what revenue and forecast reductions comes from it.
I do know, from visiting a lot of charities that are working with very vulnerable people at the moment, food rescue charities, those who are helping kids in need, often they live a pretty hand-to-mouth existence, and sometimes there are some quite wealthy New Zealanders who are very generous with them. And so one of the things that we'll be looking at is, will this change actually limit the amount of money that they're willing to give to those charities? Because it could potentially, well, I understand what the government are trying to achieve here, it could potentially actually disadvantage some of our most vulnerable.
Just confirming if Labour was elected in November that you would keep the same surplus target of 2028?
We'll set out everything in our fiscal plan. We'll give a pretty good indication of it. Actually, what I'm really excited is that we will be announcing policies very soon, so you'll just have to wait.
Related to that, how important as a principle is returning to surplus for Labour?
You're fine.
I mean, as a principle, returning to surplus is important for any finance spokesperson, any finance minister, but it all comes down to choices. So the choices that the government made this year has meant that the budget is paid for by state housing tenants, is being paid for by cuts to public services. So they're always difficult choices, but then the government choices that they've made to get to surplus now are not the choices up.
Is there anything they can sort of that's pretty good. I'd like to do that.
Look, there's plenty of individual initiatives that we would support. So some of the things in the health space I've already talked about, infrastructure investment, although some of that is just dressing up road maintenance projects and trying to make them sound exciting. That's road maintenance that was already booked and would already have happened anyway. Things that help to create jobs, where we've been able to identify them, and there's a limited range of them. Infrastructure is one of those areas. They're good things, and we will support that.
Can we expect the fiscal plan in, say, the next few weeks?
No, because I need to crunch through this budget and go through line by line, have a look at the savings, have a look at the different, the assumptions that underpin those forecasts, have a look at all the different programs within the vote. And I know for some people that they might think the budget, economic fiscal update, that small book is the budget. No, it's that volume of books which we need to get through.
So we can't expect a fiscal plan from Labour for over the next month?
You'll definitely get a fiscal plan from Labour, and I know everybody's very excited about it, but today it's the hard work to go through those volumes of changes in the budget.
Quite a bit process in the last election. We're not really seeing the full fiscal plan until about 2 weeks before the
October.
election. Will you provide a full fiscal
Well, I think we can do better than 2 weeks before the election, absolutely.
I think just the extra one thing that we didn't cover was the R&D tax credit. The government is opening that up for more mining operations, but at the same time cutting back on other parts of the R&D tax credit. For a government that wants to uplift research and development, they've chosen the winner, and the winner's the mining industry.
Do you have a sense of what that would mean? There's not a lot of detail around that.
No, there's never not that much detail. Hopefully we'll see the legislation today. Usually it's in a schedule what you can actually claim under the R&D tax credit.
A prudent and responsible budget does not increase the burden on those who can afford to pay it the least. And that's what this budget does. It says to those New Zealanders who are already struggling, they are going to ask them to make a bigger sacrifice. It is a sacrifice they can't make. They don't have that extra money. Oh, look, I know everybody tries to name a budget in sort of a couple of words or less. I would simply name this Nicola Willis's last budget. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Follow and listen to The Sound of My Father on your favourite app or after 7 a.m. on Sunday morning on RNZ National.
All right, welcome to the Politics Group Chat. Joining me in Auckland is comedian and commentator Tim Batt. Hi, Tim.
Hello, Jesse.
In Fielding, it's screenwriter, podcaster and free speech advocate Dane Giroux. Hi, Dane.
Kia ora, Jesse.
And I'm sorry to say, sending her apologies this week is our regular Natalia Albert. Get well soon, Natalia, if you're listening. Now, we're recording this before today's budget was delivered, so if any of our hot takes are somewhat lukewarm, that's our excuse. One thing we do know is that the government has confirmed around 9,000 public service jobs will go in today's budget. That's after an earlier round of public sector cuts in 2023. Now, defenders of these latest cuts point out that the public service grew by around 30% under Labour and that some pruning was overdue. Nicola Willis, the Finance Minister, says the aim is to save costs in part by adopting AI tools and eventually get the total number working for public service down to 1% of the population. Seems reasonable, Tim.
Why?
Well, 1%'s a nice number, isn't it?
It's a nice number,
It's
sure.
been going
It doesn't
up
mean,
and up and up for a few years.
Doesn't mean it has to have any relation to our public sector. No, I don't think this is reasonable at all. I mean, to take the AI point initially for a second, there are some things that we know AI can really help us with. For example, some news stories making the rounds today around cancer detection. We've known about that for years. That has been a fantastic use case. Probably going to replace some radiologists and radiographers down the track. But at the moment, it's proving to be an incredibly effective utilisation of this new tech. There are a lot of places where AI is being implemented where it is backfiring massively. And my fear is that this government is moving really quickly in an area that they seem to know very little about, replacing people with AI where it's inappropriate. And my wider issue is this government sort of proved themselves time and again to not listen to experts on issues. We've had issues with the ferries when they first got in with Nicola Willis. They cut a third of the digital staff at Te Whatu Ora, and now we're dealing with these health record hacks for almost 100,000 New Zealanders that seemingly were very preventable. These are like basic security issues that should have been fixed ages ago if we had a proper workforce on it. And there seems to be a track record of this government moving really quickly, breaking things and not listening to experts. So I don't have faith in
There is one difference, of course. AI, there aren't really any experts, and the only way to learn how to use AI well is to jump in and have a bit of an experiment. Like, we know that there will be efficiencies to be had. Why not just give this new tool a go? Everyone wants the cost of the public service to go down.
I could give you a ton of reasons. One is that no one knows exactly how it works. So you get these determinations that are being made. The insurance industry is a good example of this, where it's been implemented in America and it's coming out with outcomes that are very questionable, and no one quite can go into the black box to discover why it's made these determinations on certain outcomes in insurance, right? So payouts or denying people coverage. And there is a real fear that it has inherent into the algorithms governing it human biases that we can't see anymore. Sexism, racism.
That's been a concern since the start. Maybe you just have a line, though. I mean, Nicola Willis gave the example. She said she used it to say, hey, how are they cutting back on the public service around the world? Did some research that would have taken her team 2 weeks. It saved her all those man hours or woman hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, there are some places where AI is going to... I'm not a Luddite about this. AI is a wonderful new technology, but we need to use it appropriately. And I think cutting 8,000 people from our workforce to attempt to replicate their work with algorithms we can't look into... This is also ignoring the fact that we're going to be at the behest of the vendors and the platforms that provide us with these solutions. So we're going to be paying whatever they want to charge us.
GPT could get more expensive.
And it is right now. This is the experience of Microsoft and Uber, who are cutting back on their AI spend because it is spiralling out of control.
Dane, are you broadly supportive of these cuts?
I am broadly supportive. I think a bloated bureaucracy becomes self-justifying. And the public sector has expanded dramatically after COVID. Ministries with duplicated functions, communication teams ballooning consultant culture, which plays quite corrupt in the eyes of your tech and any tyre changer, you know, because it is.
Do you like the idea of jumping in, Dane, and trying out some AI tools and seeing where we can save some money?
Look, I use AI myself. It's been very helpful, but this is one of those experiments that's like, what if it is too good? And we convince ourselves that our Prime Minister should be AI. You know, like, what if it is just too good at these jobs? That would be my concern.
Well, let's stay on government waste, because Housing Minister Louise Upston is collecting around $1,000 a week in taxpayer-funded out-of-Wellington accommodation allowances to live in an apartment she owns. She's not the only one. The Spin-Off reports today that Andy Foster has been collecting $36,000 a year despite owning a home in Wellington for 26 years. Now, Louise Upston says she's comfortable with it. The allowance exists to help MPs who have to maintain 2 homes, but critics say it's a bit...
We've done what we said. We said we would deliver a responsible budget, a budget that was appropriate for the times that we are in, but also incredibly encouraging to see a 2.7% growth rate averaged over the 4 years, really encouraging to see 220,000 new jobs being created, and importantly, the way that people get ahead is when wages are growing faster than inflation. But with that, we're happy to take your questions for today.
Is this an election-winning budget?
Well, this is a budget that's about making sure we do the right thing for New Zealanders going forward, and that's what we are about, is securing New Zealand's future. It's a budget that continues to fix the basics and build the future, but making sure that New Zealand is on the right pathway. The single worst thing that can happen to New Zealanders, given the experience we've had after the previous Labour government, is for us to have reckless spending, wasteful spending, driving up inflation, driving up interest rates, slowing the economy down and people losing their jobs. We have been working in the exact reverse, and that's why it's so important we fix the books. It's so important that in order to lower debt, lower tax, lower interest rates, that we actually have a responsible budget in this way, and I think New Zealanders understand that and they really appreciate what we're doing.
How confident are you saving the budget, particularly looking at the outer years? The Labour Party says that the surplus you're projecting is flimsy because they're not sure how credible those savings are. Can you speak to that?
Very credible. Let's remember we've got a track record of delivery. We delivered $1.6 billion a year of annualised baseline savings in our first budget. We got it done. This is a government that is committed to getting more value out of every taxpayer dollar, and we've created time so that the public service has time to plan for it, so that these can be gradual changes well prepared for. So we will deliver those savings. And I'd note that if the Labour Party suddenly had a road to Damascus experience and doesn't think it's achievable, they should look back at Grant Robertson's announcements in 2023 before that general election, in which he committed to a very significant baseline savings program. I don't recall the PSA having any rallies about it, though.
Prime Minister, regarding that $450 million that you put in that kind of contingency fund if the fuel crisis continues to bite, you know, we've been speaking to people today who are struggling, dealing with the cost of living crisis. Why was the decision made to hold it for a rainy day instead of giving some of those people that help now?
Well, it's a contingency that we've baked into our operational expenditure, exactly as Nicola explained in her speech, and it's very deliberate because we don't ultimately know what the duration of the conflict will be, but we are very clear from day one to set up our lens, which is to say we have to be financially responsible, because the worst thing is actually if we lose formation on spending and inflation and we get back into interest rates and low growth and people losing jobs, as we saw post-COVID. We're not doing that again. We have to keep an eye on the medium and the long term with our books and our finances, but on the other hand, you know, we actually are saying, and that'll be the lens by which we look at that spending of that cash that's been put aside, is it timely, is it targeted, is it actually to people that will need it, is it temporary support for those that will desperately need it. So we'll continue to look at opportunities as needed, but I'd also note it's been encouraging to see, you know, conversations happening between the parties in the region. You know, we really encourage them all to get to a resolution, and equally, you know, I think there's been a little bit of relief when people have come off the last 4 weeks where we've seen diesel even come down 50 cents from its highs. I know it's very difficult. I know it's still very tough. We've tried to say to everyone from day one, we are not in a financial position to alleviate the pressures for everybody, but we will be responsible economic managers, so when we pass this crisis, we can pop back up on our foils again. I think the key message out of this budget, I think a lot of people will be surprised, is that, you know, our plan has just been delayed. It hasn't been derailed by this conflict, and that's because we've managed, I think, minimise the impact on inflation and growth as best we possibly can.
Does this mean that the government won't commit to extra fuel response funding beyond that 465 million?
Well, again, for us looking out, we've put the money aside. We will make sure that coming through the principle of timely, targeted, temporary, that is the way in which we will make assessments as to how best to deploy the money. But, having spoken to many other world leaders, even in recent days, I can tell you there are many economies that are now just throwing a cash bazooka around and having some serious regrets about that. Our goal here is to get through this crisis, as painful as it is, as tidily as possible, with as less impact on inflation and growth as possible, so that we can pop up and actually get back on our foils and get moving again.
On your bank tax, David Seymour says that ultimately that cost is going to the customer. Is there anything that you can do to change?
Ask the banks not to do that.
Yeah.
Would you be directing them or providing them this?
I'm directing them right now. Do not do that to New Zealand customers. You are some of the most profitable companies in the country. You do very well for yourselves. Do not put extra costs onto your New Zealand customers.
And sorry, I would underscore that. The 4 banks in New Zealand have made $6.5 billion worth of net profits, essentially. This is well less than 1% of those profits. If you add up that profit pool, when you think about the next 200 companies in New Zealand combined, I don't think they get close to making that sort of amount of money. So they've got plenty of capacity to absorb it. I look at their net interest margins. I watch this quite closely, and I look at how it compares around the world. So I have zero expectation that there'll be any pass-through whatsoever. That is my expectation.
So Prime Minister, why not more?
Sorry?
Why not more? You mentioned the massive profits. Why not go further?
Well, I'm just saying to you that we've started here with the prudential levy. It's important, but I'm saying it's quite digestible for the 4 Aussie banks to manage this. It's quite easy for them to do so.
They remain under active consideration.
So when you say active consideration, is there a sense of coalition partners to get across?
Well, as I was very candid in the lockup, I haven't been able to convince my coalition partners yet, but I retain hope.
Prime Minister, on the 2023 election campaign trail, you pledged that you would lower bowel cancer screening to match Australia. You lowered it from 60 to 58, and today from 58 to 56. Chris Hipkins has just said that you've broken your promise. What do you say to him and the others, those other people that would like to get screened?
Well, I just don't remember Chris Hipkins even attempting to do anything in bowel screening while he had 6 years in government. What I said at that time is we want to get to where Australia is. We are working our way through that, making sure that we build the capability to do that. A lot of that's about making sure we've got the staffing, the resources. As you know, we're rolling out the in-home screening kit so we can make better use and more efficient use of our colonoscopies and staff associated with that. So, I'm proud of the fact that we're on a pathway to getting to where the Australians are, but we've got to start, and you've got to start on the journey, and that's what we are doing. And we've done it in 2-year increments, and when we digest the 56, then we'll keep going. And so that's what you're seeing here.
Realistically, can we expect it to get to 54 next year?
Well, we're going to continue. It depends on. We are doing everything we can, working as quickly as we can to get the workforce in place, to get the screening kits out there, which means that when we don't have people clogging up colonoscopies because they don't need those services, and we want to make sure we use the resources we've got very efficiently. So just rest assured, we're going to keep driving ourselves towards that. And that's what you're seeing today.
Sorry, just capital spending package. When it comes to health and transport, the intentions and the demand in the coming years beyond this forecast period is going to exceed the sort of the funding commitments that have been made over time. Are you on the path to closing that gap?
Yes, so there's 2 aspects to that. The first is you've got to manage your day-to-day operational spending well so that you have the room for that significant capital investment in the infrastructure the country needs. That's a large part of our fiscal strategy. The second thing is what we've been doing as a government is setting out those longer-term plans for infrastructure across the health system, education system, transport system, so that we can have a sequence of projects. And what you've seen us do in this year's budget is pick off the next set of projects in that health plan, in that education plan, in the next road of national significance. And we intend to keep taking that approach in each budget. There's no question, though, unless we manage our day-to-day spending well, New Zealand won't be able to afford to make those big capital investments into the future.
Are you saying you won't have to do anything novel around the ROMs in order to afford that $56 billion price tag over time? You're going to still fund it piece by piece through the together the national
Look, we've been clear that we are open to a range of funding and financing mechanisms for the roads of national significance, including public-private partnerships, new approaches to funding them. That remains the case. The key point for us is that you have to do that in a sequenced way. They have to be projects whose business cases stack up, that are ready to deliver. This year's budget, we focused that Waikato Expressway extension because it's consented. The route is designated. The properties have been purchased. Its business case stacks up beautifully. It's ready to go.
Treasury advises that government agencies are struggling to get money out of the door, basically. What is that going to mean? If you can't do that, you commit all this money, but how much of it is actually there?
Well, we've been really conscious of that going into this year's budget round, and I set particular disciplines for ministers as they bid for capital projects. I said a key factor for whether you'll get the funding is our assessment of how deliverable your project is over the next 12 months. So we have increased the robustness of the assurance and exercises we do to see, is this a project that's ready to go? And so that's a large factor of how we've chosen the projects that we have.
Which countries are unhappy now that they will get the cash sector out?
Oh, I'm not talking about private conversations I have with leaders, but there's a number of countries that have had a different set of responses to the fuel crisis than what we have. There are some that have followed some of the same logic that we've applied as well. But I'm just saying, there is.
Just relay a sense of regret from some of the leaders.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I think they're actually just throwing cash around and actually dealing with the short-term gain, as I've been saying from the get-go, versus the long-term pain associated with that as they start to face up to their fiscals. It's incredibly challenging. We went through that being handling COVID so poorly economically. The fact that we had such a big hangover. It took us so long after having sprayed all the cash around. It caused so much long-term pain and damage to the New Zealand economy. That's the mistake that we are not repeating here. And we make no bones about that. Oh, there will be. There'll be some countries. When I've talked to their leaders, they think they've got some real challenges because.
Additional post-April support. Why was that important in the budget? I understand we're urban unit tomorrow. Why did not make that?
Yeah, look, something that was been part of a National Party program, and we've gone to the election several times around it, and we've got a lot of passion for that. We think the more that we can offer up the option of a 3-day stay for mums, that's a fantastic thing to be doing.
That day that you, after you have had your baby, and you're in hospital and you're getting the care of others, what you don't want to be worried about is when am I getting booted out. So we think at a minimum you should know. You've got 3 days there where no one's going to nudge you along, where if you want to be there, you can be there getting the support of our wonderful nurses, midwives and doctors, because that period in a woman's life and in a baby's life is so important. And being well supported in those first few days actually sets women up for more success in those really challenging early days of parenthood.
Hey guys, sorry guys, we'll take it. Sorry guys, can we go to money?
Baby advice question. Why prioritise money broadcasting and the funding?
Oh, that's really important. Today is really important. It's a real taonga, and so it's important that we do make sure we've got funding for Māori broadcasting, as you saw, and I'm proud of that.
For better or worse, there appears to be a lot of evidence to suggest that people make charitable donations because of the tax benefits that they receive as a result of that. Obviously, this budget has been capped at $30,000 that tax credit. Are you worried that might lead to a reduction in people donating to charities?
No. New Zealanders are very generous, and we expect that to continue.
How are you expecting this budget to affect the housing market?
Well, again, what you've seen under this government is, I think, a very proud record on housing. You've seen housing affordability improve. You're not seeing a 30% growth in house prices in a single year like we saw under Labour. And you're seeing more steady, moderate, house price growth. That's a good thing. You're seeing a record number of first home buyers come into the marketplace. I think it's about 29% of all purchases. So we want to see steady, consistent, moderate house price growth, but we don't want to see up 30% one year, down 17% the next year, which has been the boom-bust nature of New Zealand. And that has been because of very poor planning laws, where we actually haven't opened up supply to be able to build houses. Go down to Christchurch and look at the situation in Christchurch, which post the earthquake, opening up a whole set of new suburbs, whether it's Pegasus or Selwyn or Prebbleton, has been very, very positive, where you can get good quality housing at fair price, at better prices, steady, moderate growth, and people have more disposable income to do other things with. I'd look at the actions that we've taken on rents. Rents were going up $180 a week under Labour. They're stable, if not falling, under us. The thing I found incredible was when we left government and when we came back to government, people on the social housing wait list had gone up 4 times. And we've already taken, I think, 7,000, 8,000 people off the social housing wait list and brought that back down. And we've taken people out of emergency housing, put them into homes, and we've got support for our homeless folk as well, as you've seen in the last 6 months. So I'd put our record up against housing, against a Labor Greens record any day of the week, and what they did was disgraceful.
Do you think
stick up more?
You came came out of the budget and promised to reverse the changes to the subscription fees. Today, Labor is not making any commitments about going forward with anything on the budget, reversing anything on the budget. Can you speak about whether it is possible to make those commitments when you're going through the budget?
Well, Jamie, I think it's quite outrageous, if I'm honest. You know, jump on our website from 2023, jump on the Labor website at this time in 2026. You would be crucifying me if I had as little policy as what the Labor Party has. What have we had? We've had a flimsy capital gains tax with some three doctor's visits, which no one knows how the hell that all hangs together. We've got a future fund sort of bumper sticker piece of paper that actually doesn't have any detail to it, based off a treaty or based off that Kiwis just don't care apparently about the detail. But it's woeful. I mean, it is woeful. That's why I say they're the laziest, most unsuccessful opposition I've seen, because they have no policy ideas. They have nothing to contribute to the debate. That's the point of an opposition. Go back and look at what National was doing in 2022 and 2023. We had a chock full of ideas about what we've done. And then look at what we did from day one. We implemented that program in government. So, you know, I don't really, the Labor Party is not someone I spend a lot of time thinking about, because they don't bring anything that adds, all they do is carp and criticise and sing duck songs.
Yeah, you know, Chris Hipkins is the man without a plan.
Yep.
Labor have mastered the art of describing the country's problems, but they cannot offer solutions. And we've presented a budget. If they had alternative ideas, this is the day for them to talk about them. The reason they're not talking about them is they don't have any. And actually, at this time, what New Zealanders need and expect is political leadership that has a clear plan, that is focused on delivering it, that can see what one step leads to the other, and that we can make progress. And our government has demonstrated progress, has a clear plan, is on target. And so this would be a very risky time to change to, frankly, a rabble by the time you count the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, who don't have any idea what they want to do. Well, actually, the Greens do want to tax people more and borrow more, and frankly have no vision for the future of this country.
Okay, guys, we'll take one question, mate. You have a nice one, and then we're going to go.
The opposition as a whole is saying that this budget leaves New Zealanders to fend for themselves. I mean, what's your response to that?
Well, I'd just say a budget that's going to have 2.7% growth in the economy over the next 4 years is pretty exciting. 220,000 new jobs being created is really important, and wages growing faster than inflation so that Kiwis can get ahead, that's a really positive thing. And we have inherited a mess. We have fixed those basics that Labor broke, and we are still continuing to do that work. And we are also building out a future for New Zealanders that I think is pretty exciting. Yeah, this is the greatest country on earth, and we have so much potential in this awesome country of ours. That's what we're working hard to achieve. We want it set up for our kids and our grandkids so they can do exceptionally well. And there's no reason or no excuses we can't do that if we make the right choices, if we face up to make tough decisions, and that's what this budget's doing. So I'm very proud of this budget. I'm very proud of Nicola and all the Associate Ministers of Finance that have worked so hard and collaboratively on it, and I hope New Zealanders will understand that we are setting and securing their future by fixing the basics and building the future. All right, take care. Thanks, team. You've got to go.
Well, look, we're investing significant amounts in our health system.
You feel it much more when you hand cash over, and sometimes that's a good thing.
It's physical. I want to get physical with my cash. 2101. Are you a cash stacker? Let me at you.
I like the idea of you doing a public campaign for more cash with the Olivia Newton-John song in the background, with you wandering around handing out $20 bills to people.
Wanna get physical?
Exactly.
Let me hear your 30 talk.
Exactly.
Your 30 talk. Let me hear your 20 talk.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not a bad idea. Okay. Hey, Jesse, now to the budget. So we unpack this at 6 with an economist. And a focus on health. For example, one of many free bowel screening from the ages 58 to 56. So 200,000 extra recipients. Quite a good one, that one, actually. So we unpack. And tonight, the language of budgets. Your tough love budget. Your take your medicine budget. Your bread and butter budget. Do you always find the language around budgets just a little bit patronising or infantile? You know, I mean, do we have to every year?
It's funny how they stick, eh?
They stick, all right.
Yeah.
Your lolly scramble budget.
The well-being budget.
The well-being budget. Or your take your medicine budget. Do you find them just a little bit patronising, you know?
You're going to have some commentary on what Nicola Willis is wearing? That went down really well last year. I haven't seen...
So I think what we've had confirmed today with the release of this government's budget is that they have no plan, no vision, no ambition, no aspiration for our country. They have instead decided to continue entrenching an economy and a tax system that is deeply, deeply unfair and unequal. They have decided to protect the corporations massive profits at the expense of regular hard-working New Zealanders and push more children into poverty while continuing to subsidise new fossil fuel production, which Treasury tells us is actually a real risk.
And I just wanted to be really clear that, once again, this government is choosing to leave children and their whānau in poverty. Their own projections tell us that they are going to miss the legal target that they are required to achieve by law. And with no shame at all, they have announced a budget once again that requires the people already struggling the most, the people with the very least, to make up their numbers, to ensure that their budget talks about surplus and debt, but what does that mean for mothers and parents going without meals? What does it mean for people who can't pay their power bills? What does it mean for people who can't afford to get themselves or their children to doctors because of the cost of transport? It's really clear. We are not surprised, but we are deeply disappointed that once again this government can find money for the super rich and squeezes even more the people with the least. We're happy to answer your questions.
That's what I said in my speech in the chamber just before. Ultimately, what this budget is doing is starving our public services of the investment that they need. The government is also knowingly allowing more children to be plunged into and born into poverty. The government is intentionally enabling an increase in inequality. All of those things are effectively austerity.
You passed the child population and the climate change response that the Zero Carbon Act and you were in government.
Yes.
I'd like to continue to make sure that when there is a change of government,
that governments are accountable.
And climate change response and child poverty reduction continues to occur, including climate change. Doesn't, as you hear from the doesn't have to think about where you can go.
You go. You go on climate, I'll go on child poverty.
So, people may recall a speech that I gave on the Climate Change Response Act, Zero Carbon Act amendment, which went viral for different reasons. But the point that I was making in that speech was that if we were to have an independent expert body that didn't have teeth in it, that didn't have the ability to actually meaningfully hold the government of the day accountable, and instead was at risk of being dressed up in technological jargon, which is difficult for the regular person to actually understand, then that accountability actually is really hard to make happen in reality. Just to reflect on the institutions of this place, we have the likes of the Reserve Bank that has independence to set our monetary policy on the basis that politicians tend to not actually be particularly well-versed or skilled when it comes to economics. But we seem to accept that politicians know about climate science when it comes to setting our carbon budgets.
I don't know what exactly your policy is at the moment, but is it your policy at the moment, or is it something that you look at that the Climate Change Commission and some of its bodies should be given more
It's definitely something that we've talked about in the past, and I think that it's something that we should all actually invite more public discussion on, because we also see reflected in the Budget Economic and Fiscal Update from Treasury that there is some thinking that has happened about our nationally determined contribution out to Paris, obviously a different thing than the carbon budgets per the Zero Carbon Act. But what Treasury is saying there is basically what we all should hopefully already know, which is that our nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement comes home to roost in 2030. And every action that this government takes to shred domestic climate action results in us paying more in offshore mitigation to other countries to reduce their emissions. However, Treasury can't forecast what that figure looks like because this government refuses to put their money where their mouth is.
That money will be used if you're in government at the end of the year. You might be the one who's forced to find that domestic.
Yeah, having to foot the bill. Well, that kind of, it tells you everything that you need to know about this government, that this budget is smoke and mirrors, that it is rhetoric and spin and bumper stickers, as Christopher Luxon likes to accuse others of. There is no meaningful, credible plan for the time bomb of the costs that we all know are coming down the pipeline.
What did you make of the government's capital investment?
I mean, yeah, sure. But let's talk about what's missing. Let's talk about the investment that has been foregone because the government has decided to protect the wealthiest, who just so happen to also often accord with their donors.
Are you glad to see investment in operating
Let's talk about the fact that in October last year, Cabinet made an active decision to defer all meaningful decisions until after the election on climate adaptation, on most notably the most meaningful question of who pays and what the likes of managed retreat looks like. They have put all of their eggs in the basket of flood mapping, and their own officials have advised us that that is not going to deal with the big issues that are in front of us. There is a huge fiscal time bomb here.
And will the Greens come up with an alternative budget, and if so, what data are dropping?
Look, we are the third largest party in Parliament, and we've done a heck of a lot of work over the last 2 years to show people exactly what an alternative Green-led government would look like. But we've got an election this year, so you'll see some of the really exciting things that we have to say in our election policy. We won't be releasing a full alternative budget this year, no.
Can I pick up on the important issue that was raised about accountability for child poverty targets that are set in law? And it's been a hectic day for everyone here at Parliament, for all of you. If we just take a pause for a minute and really ask, what is a government's responsibility and job if not to ensure that all of our children are looked after? Especially in light of families are doing their best to make ends meet. They're holding several jobs. They're cutting where they can. They're trying to meet the power bill, the food bill, the rent, any other costs on top of that. They're doing the absolute best they can, but there is not enough to ensure that their children have the basics, have kai, have shelter, have clothing, have shoes, have enough things to go to school and be able to function properly. What is a government's responsibility, if not that? We have enough in this country to ensure that no one misses out. Those are just political decisions. For the third year in a budget row, this government has chosen to leave children in poverty, which on its own is obscene. But the fact that they are not going to meet the targets to improve that says exactly what my co-leader has just said. It shows you exactly who this government is here for. And I want to add, I found just before, there's a lot to go through in those documents, right? I just found further cuts to violence prevention funding. I want to talk about that because this government has not afforded the Violence Prevention Minister, Karen Chua, an extra dollar of support. Not an extra dollar. But in fact, they have clawed back funding that I was really proud to announce to initiatives. This year, I just happened to find, yet again, more millions taken away from Project Whetu, a project which was primarily focused on a better way of working with police and communities, iwi and hapu, around violence prevention, working out what works, properly putting support into ensuring that our families with often intergenerational trauma have the support they need to end that cycle of violence. This government has revoked that funding. I'm pretty pissed off about it.
The Prime Minister and the Finance Minister were here just a moment ago talking about how there's growth, the surpluses being brought forward by a year, and that New Zealanders aren't being left to fend for themselves because they have this greater economic boost to look forward to.
Kids in poverty can't eat their surplus. They have actively
That's right.
made decisions to push more children into poverty.
And kids in poverty can't wait for this fantasy growth that they're talking about. They need it now. They're cutting funding to food banks in further years. The very support that families are relying on right now, kids in poverty and their families cannot wait a day more for this fantasy growth when even the government's own projections have shown that when they thought they were going to see growth, they did not. Kids in poverty do not deserve what this government is dishing out.
You say fantasy growth. Do you not think that the numbers add up here?
Look, we have seen growth despite the government's best efforts to starve the economy, but that has not been as a result of anything meaningful that the government has done.
Right.
In fact, that's been as a result of hard-working New Zealanders just slogging it out, and also our commodity prices, which is largely a lottery. We're very lucky that that has happened. But that growth is not being equally distributed, and that's the point here. If you're just relying on growth to solve all of our problems without any meaningful economic management, you're kidding yourself. I think the thing that I found the most galling about the Prime Minister's speech just earlier today was the fact that he referenced the state that our great-great-grandparents had built in the 1930s. Let we all remember the reality that after the Great Depression and some of the most atrocious world wars that we have ever seen, we as a country came together and decided to create things that had never existed before. Public housing, public healthcare, the welfare state, which this government is mercilessly shredding while invoking our memories of that very thing. Nothing in this government makes logical sense. And I think part of the problem there is that we've been looking for a thread of logic that actually makes sense in the context of supporting regular New Zealanders. But actually things do make sense if you understand that their primary interest is lining the pockets of those at the top.
Sorry about that. How needed is a change in superannuation? Do you think that we should get the means to pay for that from other areas like changes in taxation?
I mean, again, we've shown our numbers and our working in the past. We know that as a result of our superannuation scheme that we have some of the lowest rates of elder poverty in the OECD. In fact, what we know is that we can expand support to those who need it. And if we are concerned about certain people getting access to entitlements that they don't necessarily deserve, I don't think that you necessarily resolve that issue by introducing more administration, more bureaucracy and more complexity. We can instead fix the goddamn tax system.
There's a lot of criticism being both people like the coalition partners, Labour and the Chamber, about their making policy. As they like the coalition partners, about that criticism.
We're in the Green Party because we have the courage of our convictions.
And do you think they don't have the courage of their convictions?
I think that that's a question that you should put to the Labour Party. We've been very clear about what our policy positions are, what our values are. New Zealanders know where we stand.
In terms of health, the lower bowel screening age, although it is still higher than the initial promise, are you taking that as a positive step forward, or is it too little too late?
Well, let's remember that the lowering of that bowel screening age is also on the back of Māori and Pacific people who had to increase the screening age, which actually means more deaths from bowel screening, because when it comes to Māori and Pacific people, we have to look at equity. And so, once again, it's the Health Minister scrambling to try and make good of something that was really evil from the very start when he raised those bowel cancer ages. Again, we shouldn't have to have competition for things that are life-saving, like bowel screening ages, especially among different groups of people, when we can instead properly fund the health system, make sure that everyone gets the screening that they need to save lives.
Do you welcome the additional funding for Kiwi Rail?
We love trains, but I mean, there should be so much more investment here. I mean, look, this government is saying that, I referred to it actually in my speech. 2 months ago, the Prime Minister stood in one of these rooms in this building and he told everybody boldly that hope is not a plan. At almost precisely the exact same moment, his Energy Minister was cancelling the plan for energy. These things do not add up. If we are going to confront meaningfully the fossil fuel crisis, we need to actively decarbonise our economy. And with all of this government's messing about with potentially having heavier trucks on our roads, actually the best way to reduce that dependency and that vulnerability would be serious, meaningful investment in rail. So sure, it's a start, but let's go so much further. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Ooh, whippy, yippee, when they're looking in there for their little tiny sugar hit.
Incredible that this is the big headline. It's quite dry, but I guess that is in keeping with the theme. This is what Nicola Willis wants to be talking about today. She wants to be talking about the numbers. She wants to be talking about the fact that Treasury is now predicting a return to surplus by 2028, 2029, and that is a year earlier than Treasury was predicting last year in December. Now, Nicola Willis says this is because she is making the tough decisions. She's making these big cuts, most of which, in fact, all of which were foreshadowed in advance. We saw the scrapping of fees free, the cuts across the public service, the social housing changes, that was all announced well in advance, got out of the way. She says, Nicola Willis says, she has carefully managed the finances here, and that's why we get to surplus earlier. I would say there is quite a big asterisk by the numbers, and that they are rather reliant on some perhaps fairly ambitious assumptions. For one, that the fuel crisis is going to be a temporary one, that growth is going to be up around 2.7% over the next 4 years, that employment is going to bounce back. Treasury itself acknowledges quite a lot of uncertainty around these numbers, a little bit more trouble in the Middle East, and that surplus could quite quickly evaporate. I should also say that it is reliant on the cuts to the public service actually eventuating. And we know from one Winston Peters that he at least doesn't intend to follow through on some of them. So there is quite a lot of uncertainty here. But again, this is clearly Nicola Willis's election year pitch. She is getting the books back in order in what is a dangerous and unpredictable time. That's the strategy. That's her pitch to voters. I think it will resonate with some. It is consistent with her messaging right through to date. I think it would have been quite discordant had she suddenly come out today and announced a big flashy spend up. But on the flip side, we know New Zealanders care most about the cost of living crisis right now. That is what all the polling is saying. There is absolutely nothing in here tangible to help them on that count, and that is quite a risky proposition.
Craig, lots of the big ticket items, core spending areas, some people might say are boring, but they are health services and infrastructure, aren't they?
This is the stuff that sometimes does slip under the radar on budget day, despite it being often the largest sums of money. It's not flashy, it's not new. It is, for example, more money down that endless pit that is the health system. It's education, it's law and order. It is money to simply keep the lights on. Nicola Willis has again made a virtue of that this year. There is this massive whack of cash for health, an injection of almost $6 billion over 4 years for frontline services. If you look beneath that number, there are some interesting initiatives in there, which I think will probably get some more attention once all the dust settles. There's money there to bring down the age of bowel screening, bringing that down from 58 to 56. Also money in there to let new mums stay in hospital for longer after giving birth. So there's money there for health. Then infrastructure as well, stealing some quite big headlines. Huge money there in one-off capital expenditure, almost $2 billion going to the Waikato Expressway, extending that from Cambridge to the Tauranga turnoff. You've got $1 billion to upgrade the Kiwi Rail network and a new hospital block at Whangarei Hospital as well, more than 150 beds there. So some quite big projects, some quite important spending.
And tell us about this surprise new tax on banks.
Yes, one of the few surprises in the budget. This new tax, despite the no new taxes promised, the government is calling this a levy on the banking sector. They will have to stump up with some funds now to the Reserve Bank, effectively to help cover the regulatory services that it provides at the moment. Nicola Willis says it's only fair that other countries already do this, and it's not a bad headline for them, really, whacking the big banks. It's not really, though, that much money in the big scheme of things. It's only about $200 million over 4 years. There's also the argument, which David Seymour's making, that the banks are just going to pop up their fees, so New Zealanders are just going to be stung there. Curiously, quite a talking point in the lockup, actually, among the various ministers. Nicola Willis gave a pretty clear signal that she was keen to go further. She said she'd been exploring other options there to hit the bank's levies that are imposed overseas, but ultimately she could not get consensus around the cabinet table. Pretty obviously that was down to the ACT party. Indeed, ACT David Seymour said he does not believe in tax for tax's sake. He said the levy makes sense because it's covering a cost, but he didn't support anything more than that. So that's why we didn't see anything along those lines in today's budget.
Thank you, Craig. That is our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch. It is 13 minutes after 4. Ki amo tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. From what we've heard so far, what do you make of the budget? What's in there for you? 2101 on text. You can email us checkpoints@rnz.co.nz. Here are a couple of thoughts from New Plymouth and Hawke's Bay on the budget.
It's not promising at all, especially for families and bigger families that are struggling already to put food on the table.
Can you see anything, or have you heard of anything in the budget that might improve your life right now?
No, they could have cut the lunches and given people back school buses, because every day we're having to drive our kids to school because they've cancelled the school bus services.
Right, it's an election year, but Nicola Willis says she's not prepared to bribe New Zealanders with their own money. What would you say to that?
Bribe us. We need it.
So, Katie, can you see anything in the budget that will improve your life?
I'd like to think there's some health benefits for people, because that's lacking at the moment.
So Nicola Willis says she wasn't prepared to bribe New Zealanders with their own money. What do you make of that statement?
Typical Nicola Willis statement, if you ask me. I'm very concerned about the most helpless in society in New Zealand. I think there's been so many cuts. Much rather see money invested in that than being back in surplus. People are more important than money. I would like to see money spent on health. I think that's the core of society, people having free healthcare. So I'm glad to see that there's money allocated to that. Not quite so concerned about the freeway, if I'm honest.
And that was people on the streets of New Plymouth and Hawke's Bay with their initial thoughts on the budgets. We'd love to hear from you. 2101 on text. What do you like in it? What not so much? You can also email us checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's head to the United States now. It has reportedly carried out new strikes in Iran targeting a military site which officials say could have endangered American forces. Meanwhile, at a White House cabinet meeting today, Donald Trump made it clear that he is in no rush to secure a deal with Iran. The comments come as the conflict approaches 90 days. With more, here's our Washington DC correspondent, Zach Monterello.
The U.S. military said that they launched additional strikes in Iran, saying they struck a military site along the coast of Iran that was deemed a threat to American forces, along with downing some drones. This is the second sort of smaller strike in the past week, with another one earlier this week on Monday. In both situations, U.S. officials tried to downplay the severity of the strike, signaling it was small and that the ceasefire still holds, but it kind of shows how tenuous the peace agreement is right now. And that peace agreement really was top of mind at today's cabinet meeting, where President Donald Trump summoned his cabinet and kind of had the Iran war hanging over the entire conversation. You know, it was a typical cabinet meeting by Trump standards. A lot of the officials talked about how great of a president he was, but they also focused in on the aftershocks of the war. Many cabinet members insisted that the energy shocks from the war, the rising gas prices here and globally, would only be temporary. And the president repeated that the war was going his way and that he wasn't rushing into any peace negotiations. Trump said that I don't care about the midterms when it comes to the war, and that he can wait out the Iranian regime in negotiations for what he views as would be the best deal for the U.S. And he warned that if Iran does not come to an agreement, he's happy to resume the military campaign. On top of that, though, he sent some warnings to Arab countries at this cabinet meeting. He publicly renewed his calls for nations to join his Abraham Accords, which would mean normalizing relationships with Israel, warning that not doing so could jeopardize the Iran peace talks. He also warned Oman over reported plans to jointly run the Strait of Hormuz with Iran, threatening to, quote, blow them up, unquote, if they don't get in line.
Let's talk about the midterms. There have been some major developments in Texas around those. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so deep in the heart of Texas, the battle lines are drawn in one of the most important Senate races of this year. The Trump-endorsed Attorney General Ken Paxton beat incumbent Senator John Cornyn earlier this week in the Republican primary, competing Trump's revenge tour in the state. Paxton is Texas's chief law enforcement official, but he has a long list of scandals, from corruption allegations that he denies to a messy divorce. Trump's decision roiled other Republicans in Washington who liked the long-serving Cornyn, but who at times landed on the president's bad side. Perhaps more importantly, however, is that many Senate Republicans believe that Paxton is the weaker candidate compared to Cornyn and puts the seat in play in November when Democrats are trying to capture the upper chamber. Paxton is unpopular with donors who have to fund the effort to run for Senate, and Republicans believe his scandals also makes him a weak candidate with voters. Even if Paxton wins, they fear that he will drag down other Republicans in closer races throughout the state, including several House races. Democrats, meanwhile, have rallied behind James Tallarico, a one-time teacher and state lawmaker, who they believe give them a credible chance at winning in Texas, a state they have long sought to find any sort of foothold in.
Let's talk basketball. There is an underdog story unfolding for one long-suffering basketball team in New York. Do tell.
Yeah, the New York Knicks, who have been maybe one of the most beleaguered sports teams in American franchise history, on the precipice of becoming NBA champion for the first time in over 50 years. The Knicks have really been on a magical run throughout the basketball playoffs, steamrolling their opponents and punching their ticket to a finals appearance earlier this week. They don't yet know who they're going to face, with the Oklahoma City Thunder and San Antonio Spurs facing off later Thursday for a chance to join the Knicks in the finals. You know, despite the Knicks' really high profile, they play in New York City. They have Celebrity Row. If you ever see a picture or videos of celebrities at a basketball game, it's probably the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. They have been cursed by decades of mismanagement and horrible on-court performances. They weren't the favorite heading into this year's playoffs, but this has really turned around, and maybe they are now. They've won 10 straight games behind Jalen Brunson and seem pretty unstoppable. And kind of adding to the mayhem is that they really have a lot of gimmicks going on right now. The Knicks embraced a professional wrestler called Danhausen as an unofficial mascot, and he's kind of a strange character. He's a pseudo-vampire who collects teeth, so not your typical basketball mascot. He's already made an appearance at Madison Square Garden, much to the bafflement of the sports world, and they look to keep it going in the finals, which will kick off next week.
And that was our Washington DC correspondent, Zach Montalaro there. It is 4:20 now, and you're with Checkpoints on RNZ National. In case you hadn't noticed, it's budget day. Nicola Willis's third. If you've had a chance to check it out, tell us what you think. 2101 on text. You can email us, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. What's your favourite bit and your least favourite bit and why? It is time for the news headlines now. Anaya Karen, mena pitapita kōrero.
Thank you, Lisa. The Finance Minister has used her last budget of this government's term to preach discipline as she eyes a surplus on the horizon. Nicola Willis says the government's chosen prudent economic management over vote-winning sugar hits. She says the government's dealing with massive economic shocks and rising superannuation costs. Health is the big budget winner of the day, with $5.8 billion of new spending. Hospital redevelopments are on the cards in Tauranga, Hawke's Bay and Palmerston North, and there will also be a new tower block at Whangarei Hospital, adding more than 150 beds. Schools and early childhood services are in line for an almost $2 billion funding boost over the next 4 years. And there's more money for rail, with cash injections for national and metro networks. The fuel crisis casts a shadow over the government's entire agenda, with the inclusion of a near $500 million rainy day fund in case the situation worsens. Labour says overall the government is trying to create the illusion of progress while New Zealanders go backwards. Leader Chris Hipkins says today's budget was the government's last chance to show New Zealanders it understands how tough life is, and it's failed. In other news, the US military has carried out new strikes on Iran, targeting a military site in the strategic port city of Bandar Abbas. US Central Command has confirmed its forces also shot down 4 Iranian attack drones it says posed a threat around the Strait of Hormuz. Those are the headlines. A quick look at the short forecast from Met Service. Northland to Manawatu, also Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa. Partly cloudy with isolated showers, clearing most places this evening, but remaining in Northland and Coromandel Peninsula, areas of morning fog. Bay of Plenty and Gisborne, fine today, cloudy with isolated showers tomorrow. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington, cloudy, low cloud near the south coast. Nelson, Buller, Marlborough and Canterbury, mainly fine, some low cloud about the east coast, areas of cloud or fog in the morning. Grey and Westland, fine spells increasing, morning fog. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, mainly fine, cloud linkers in some valleys, isolated showers near the south coast. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy with a few showers. It's 4:23.
Ngā mihi e ho, let's check in on traffic around the Motu with Tuila Fuatai. Tuila.
Looking at Auckland's motorways, on the southern, it's heavy from Green Lane to Sylvia Park in both directions. On the southwestern, things are moving slowly, heading south from Massey Road to Manukau CBD. And to Wellington, there's the usual slow patches across the city. It's slow southbound on State Highway 1 by the Terrace Tunnel. State Highway 2 heading north, traffic's also starting to back up at the Haywoods interchange. And down to Christchurch, it's slow moving eastbound on State Highway 76 through Addington through to Waltham. It's also backed up in both directions on Lincoln Road between Hagley Park and Barrington Street. Any other traffic tips, text us on 2101.
Thank you, Tuila. Tuila Fuatai there with your traffic update. The government has failed in its final chance to help those New Zealanders doing it the toughest. That is Labour's verdict on the government's budget. Labour's finance spokesperson Barbara Edmonds joins me now. Kia ora, Barbara.
Talofa lava, Lisa.
What is the best thing in the budget?
It's really difficult to find best things in the budget. For example, bowel screening age testing coming down a little bit lower to 56. That's a good thing on the surface, but the government promised that it would be 50, at the age of 50. So there are some good little things in there, but ultimately this is a budget that's being paid for by taking from the poor, giving to the poor, and then ultimately the public services that New Zealanders rely on.
You don't think, $5.8 billion of new funding for health, record spending, you can't see any good in that, Barbara?
Every dollar from the last budget is record spending. And as you've seen within the documents, it said it's enough to keep the lights on.
OK, so you mentioned the bowel screening age. At the last election, it was Labour's commitment to get down to 50 years. Will you commit to that this election?
It was also Christopher Luxon's commitment to get it down to 50 years. So I know, I get it. People want us to be able to see Labour's policies now because they're looking for alternatives. Today, in the next couple of days, I'm going to crunch the government's numbers, go through the large volumes of votes, and you'll see our policies coming out sooner in June.
That's a bit of a cop-out, isn't it, Barbara? I mean, part of your job as the opposition is to propose alternatives. Can you not tell me where you stand on the bowel screening age? If you are criticising them, what have you got?
Well, the cop-out is that the government promised to make things better, but they've actually made it worse.
So what will you do that will make it better?
We want an economy that works for everybody. We want a more affordable New Zealand. The priorities for Labour and the rolling out of our policies is around jobs, health, homes and the cost of living, because that's what New Zealanders are telling us. But for today, it's the government's budget, and we're going to crunch through those numbers and make sure that the policies that we start to roll out are actually deliverable and actually affordable for New Zealand and make their lives better.
So do you have nothing to offer as an alternative?
Well, we've already announced 7 policies over and since last year. The Future Fund, a capital gains tax that's going to pay for free GPs.
So those are policies we've heard.
GPs.
Those are policies we've heard. You've criticised the fact that the bowel screening age is coming down to 56 instead of 50 years old as promised. So you can't give us a call on that one. What about
I said it's a good small start, but it was Christopher Luxon that promised the 50 and he didn't deliver, and he's in government.
So what about bringing back fees free at uni? Can you tell us what you do with that?
Again, we're going to set out everything over the next few months and our policies, but I do get it, Lisa. I do get that people want to hear an alternative, but today is the government's budget. I've got a big task ahead to crunch through those numbers and make sure that the promises we give to New Zealand, we can afford them, and that's my commitment.
So net core debt, National's aiming for about 40% of GDP. What would your goal be?
Net core debt?
Yeah.
Oh, so it peaks at 46% in 2028.
What would Labour's goal be?
What will Labour's goal be? So we'll set. We'll set that all out as part of our fiscal plan.
Okay, so you can't tell us that either. Nicola Willis said that National had kept to its promise of no new taxes. What would your top tax rate be? Because funding policies takes money, so what would yours be?
Lisa, again, we're going to roll everything out so that New Zealanders will have a clear alternative. They can make their choice come November the 7th. Today is the government's budget. I've got a task ahead of me just to make sure we crunch these numbers so that we can deliver the promises that we commit to.
Okay, let me put it another way, Barbara. What is the one core policy you would have included in this budget that we don't know already from Labour? One core thing that you would have put in it.
And again, we're going to come out with our policy announcements. Today, Lisa, is the government's budget's day. It's my day to hold them to account. And New Zealand will start to see in June the different policies and alternatives that we'll offer to them.
Okay, so, I mean, aside from criticising them, what else can you say about the budget today?
Well, clearly it's been paid for off the cuts to public services, so every New Zealander is going to pay for them.
So you wouldn't cut the public service?
And again, these are their choices. This is their third budget, and as we said, it's their last chance. They've had choices they've chosen: property speculators, investors, tobacco companies, oil and gas. These are all budget. This is another budget built on top of that. The concern for me is that it seems to be that the poorest of the poor have to pay for this, but yet there's still sweeteners in there for other types of sectors.
So what's the sweetener in there, Barbara, that you found?
The sweetener?
Yes.
In this year's budget?
Yes. You said there's sweeteners for some sectors.
So for example, there's no tax on digital tech. You know, the government got rid of that. You'll see in the R&D tax credit, it's now being extended for mining business operations. That wasn't in there. So there are small changes, and we're still making our way through.
Appreciate your time. That is Labour's finance spokesperson, Barbara Edmonds there. Do get in touch if you've had a chance to check out the budget or from what you've heard so far on the programme. 2101. Do you like any bits of it? Which bits and why? And the things that you're not so keen on, we would love to hear from you. It is 4:30 now, and you're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Let's head to sport and a financial lifeline for Moana Pacifica players. The franchise is set to fold at the end of the season, but fortunately staff will be paid until the end of July. Joining me now is sports reporter Jonty Dine. That must be a bit of a relief for them, Jonty.
Yeah, exactly. Finally something positive for Moana Pacifica, Lisa. It's been weeks of emotional turmoil for the team, and yesterday I saw firsthand the toll that it's taken. There were some pretty emotional staff members as they were starting to pack things up at Albany. Of course, the news broke this week that they have been placed into liquidation, and it's looking less and less likely that a saviour will step in to rescue them. So with their final game at this weekend, and the club obviously out of money, there were fears players wouldn't be paid, but they will get some breathing space thanks to New Zealand Rugby, who will cover salaries and costs for the next 2 months. Coach Tana Umaga saying they were incredibly grateful that NZ Rugby stepped in.
Having some certainty around, being able to put some food on the table for the next couple of weeks, or that has been really unsettling, and that's been ongoing for a while now. To get that was timely for a lot of them. When we got the news, it was met with a bit of applause, and I think a sigh of relief that there is some certainty going forward for us. We'll take what we can. At this stage, it's better than nothing, and it is the reality of the situation we're in. This is the job that they've got talent for, and they've committed to, and
the reality that quite a few of these guys will have to find jobs.
Yeah, well, it is the reality. It's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah, so a temporary reprieve, Lisa. As Umaga mentioned, the reality is a lot of his players will be on the job hunt, but they do still live with that glimmer of hope that the franchise can be saved.
And a pretty penny being offered to break a world record. Which one?
Yeah, not a bad pay packet this, Lisa. $10 million prize up for grabs. All you have to do is run 100 metres faster than any human in history. As we know, Usain Bolt, he owns the record of 9.58 seconds.
No, Shane we're talking about, but he's out. Sorry?
Yeah, especially
Oh, you use some 9 times persuading, are you? Tirangatira. Well, do you know what Tirangatira means? When the chief speaks, the word's gospel. You guys got that? Oh, sorry.
Mr. Peters, Nicola Willis in the budget lockup made a pretty pointed remark about superannuation, saying that people who weren't willing to change settings were robbing those under 50 for political expediency. What do you say to that?
Well, that shows a singular lack of understanding of the 5.2 against GDP of superannuation, and the Cullen Fund, which has passed 82 billion, which was to smooth out the edges of high costs at a future age. That's all there still. And what are they doing about it? Or do they intend to take the Cullen Fund and privatise it themselves? You see what I mean? That's what I suspect.
What do you mean you suspect that?
Say? Well, if you're not mentioning the Cullen Fund as the reason why he's not concerned about the superannuation costs going ahead, when it's 5.2% now, when most countries are 8, 9 or 10, then you intend to do something with the Cullen Fund, don't you? Not to apply it for the original purpose, which we backed 20 years ago, but for an ulterior purpose. Do you see the reason why the country needs New Zealand first?
At what point do we need to start drawing down on the Cullen Fund for that purpose?
Well, it's not yet now, because it's not a crisis yet, is it? At 5.2%, and they keep on saying, oh, but it's going to get worse, and people are getting older. No, the last 5 years indicators are that people aren't going to live longer. Quite the converse is happening. Well, she was doing very fine until then. It's a sad point of her preparation.
Was it that your deputy leader behind you there has called the minister unprofessional for doing so? Do you agree?
Well, why would you raise that when it wasn't in the budget? Excuse me. Well, now why would you raise what's not in the budget? You're there to tell the media and the journalists what's in the budget, not what's not in it. Hey? No, it's not a concern going forward. Look, if it's only 5.2%, not 7, 8, 9, 10% like in some countries, then why have you got this concern? Or is it because you don't know how to run an economy with enough wealth creation so that we're going forward and growing at 4, 5 and 6%, which is what we'll be doing if we ever get a chance to run this economy.
Are you accusing the Finance Minister of not being able to run
No. For the last 40 years, they've demonstrated they can't run an economy their way properly. And that's why we say, where's the growth rate the last 40 years? It's not acceptable. Yet in a former age, at a different time when people thought more like New Zealand first, we were running at 5.5% year on year on year.
But Mr. Peters, are you saying that the finance minister cannot run?
No, you can come to the conclusion like I just made a statement here.
Mr. Peters,
Well, I'm just saying.
said to her if you wanted to.
Well, no, I'm not going to have you making little nonsense bangs here. You have to speak me here. Don't play the silly game with me, all right? Otherwise there'll be no interviews here at all. You guys will be moving downtown. You'll have to make an appointment every month. Now, I'm just saying to you, the comparison is that some parties, their ideology means there is no chance for us to be the country we once were again. And so we need a new ideology, and the only party that's got that ideology, you're talking to.
When you went into government with National under the Bolger term, you had the role of treasurer. Would you seek a similar role so that you had more oversight?
Well, look, the first thing I got hit with was the Asian financial crisis, and we lost 60% of some of our Asian markets. And the Asian currency for some countries like, Indonesia collapsed by 80%. Now, we were in a real crisis, but we didn't go into deficit, did we? We stayed in the game and got out of there.
So I just ask you a question again. Will you seek a similar role after this election to have more control over the finances?
No, we're going for broke to ensure that New Zealanders vote for a political party with a plan that will turn this country into the dramatic success story it should be. That's what our plan is, and we're not going to be unveiling all the...
Nicholas also said there was a discussion about going further around a bank tax. Was New Zealand first supportive of that idea, and was it in the form of something like a windfall tax?
Well, yes, we were, but there's also some things out there in the future, present in other economies, almost in the last, say, year, which we've got to become aware of. Now, you'll have to wait and see what we unveil in this campaign when we talk about that, because there are other ways of ensuring this country will have the wealth it needs to invest for the development it needs.
Mr. Peters, what percentage that percentage is less than 1%? Is there a certain percentage you would have liked to have seen it at?
Oh, no, I'm not talking about what didn't happen. Sorry. I'm talking about what did happen.
Sorry, in terms of the other ways to do a tax, if it weren't...
Oh, look, I know you guys love to know, but you're going to see unveiled in this campaign a party that has got a plan and the money to make that plan work. Now, see if you can match that in this campaign. All right, I got to go. I got work to do.
Is there any circumstance...
To only have to limp along 1 year funding for the actual food banks is really difficult. But we are glad the school lunches are there. We are glad that the breakfasts are there.
At 5.2%, if you can tell me that your only hope of doing anything is to attack the savings of the seniors of a former age and take away their entitlement because you can't run the economy properly, then you confess that. But that's not our view. We believe we can run the economy far more efficiently, far more effectively, and far more successfully, and therefore this will be a lesser problem, not a bigger one.
Mr. Pierce, what are the...
Can I just ask about...
A backpack tax?
A bank tax.
No, you're not going to get there by bank taxes, what have you. You're going to get there by a thing called nationalism and adding value to all your products. So that you don't, for example, be sending things over in their most raw state, but you manufacture it and develop to the max. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do it over and over again. Industry after industry after industry. And then all of a sudden, one of these days, you can be able to relax because we'll save your future.
Just on MFAT, the new funding. Just on MFAT, the new funding for MFAT, the diplomatic network.
Oh, you do say this. You do realise there was new funding. Did you see that, did you?
Very much did.
Ah, yes. Well, the old road story is about me not having any money.
How did you secure it, Mr. Peters?
Hi guys. Sorry. Oh, not again.
There was a number of wins for New Zealand First in this. You got a bunch of money from rail as well. Did New Zealand
but rail's critical infrastructure, for goodness sake. And look, it's 2.5 times more fuel savings when you're on rail. And rail's going to make a serious comeback everywhere. And other people talk about it, but we're an action party.
What's that $1 billion going to go for?
Well, it's still laid out there. A whole host of things is laid out for. Tracks, utilities. Wellington's got 110, is it 110 for the Wellington? Yeah. Well, that's the object, because, basically we're trying to promote a commuter train in, for example, Christchurch, and also around Auckland. We've gone to Tupuia. It's been successful. Was a big effort we made with respect to Tupuia. That's been highly successful. And we're opening 2 stations in South Auckland very shortly. Did you notice that? I'll make sure I invite you guys.
On the new funding for MFAT, for this strengthening the diplomatic network, can you talk, what does that mean in practical terms? What will that look like?
Well, it means that an export-dependent nation with an export-dependent economy gets out there and starts selling itself to the max. That's what it means. Ever since we exported in 1882 their first product of frozen meat, we've been an export-dependent country. But we haven't got enough people in the field. I'll give you Croatia, 3.5 million people, 2 million less than us. It's got 86 branches offshore. We've got 56.
So would you expect this to lead to new embassies or posts?
No, I don't, because I can't persuade the political system. Can't persuade the politicians, the media either. But if we want to be what we should be doubling what we're doing offshore.
Was it appropriate for the finance minister to take a crack at her coalition partner in a budget lockup?
Look, I know you want a line for tonight's TV.
I don't want TV.
Well, I know you want a night for some headlines, but let me say it's an unfortunate mistake that she should not have made. And I don't know why she said it, because not only it was the wrong time to say it, but what she said was wrong.
Mr. Peters, when will we see the train for Wellington?
Well, give us a break, hang on. Give us a chance to get things fixed up first, will you?
This sounds really exciting. Just got to know what's happening. Mr. Peters, you going to have some crayfish tonight?
The government is spending taxpayers' money wisely. Labour says the government has failed to show it understands how tough it is out there for New Zealanders. Finance spokesperson Barbara